This is first time for me for a university lecture, so I was quite nervous, and now it's going to be very relaxing, and we're going to have a good talk. And as we're not so many, feel free to, if there is anything, just ask in between. That's possible. That's no problem. When I started researching on this topic about our cooperation between two majority newspapers and two minority newspapers, I started looking in the internet, and I couldn't find anything. As you say, it's the most important cooperation, minority and majority media in the world, but I couldn't find anything about it, which was in a way quite strange. On the other hand, it says something about that it was a natural step for us. It wasn't such a big thing. It was sort of just do it.
Yes,
I'm in the lecture now. We don't think there is a similar cooperation anywhere else in the world. We haven't heard about it. So when we say it isn't anything special for us, it is special, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Very short about me before I go through the topics that we have. I'm born 1963. My mother's Welsh, my father's from the German minority, and so I grew up with 3 languages and a dialect, so sort of 4 languages. I've been part of the German minority for the whole of my life, going through German kindergarten and schools and high school, and started my work with Der Nordschleswiger, which is the name of the newspaper, of the media, and stayed there for 4 or 5 years. Then at the end of the 80s, we were 5 or 6 journalists that went from the minority media to the majority media, which was quite special because before that you would have sort of very Danish, German, and here we were suddenly German guys coming into the Danish media business. And then you can say, okay, did we betray our own minority by going to the Danish newspaper? I think I was still chairman for a German sports club, but I was writing for the Danish media, and I think it was a good deal for the minority as well, because the Danish newspapers couldn't write sort of anti-German. When there was an anti-German, okay, there's Gwyn sitting opposite me, so it would, and we could actually feel that through many years that the Danish media we were at changed focus and stance on this Danish-German topic. After that, I went for 5 years to something completely different, transport media, German-Danish company. And then eventually, almost 10 years ago, I came back to Der Nordschleswiger. And my wife also works within the minority in the schooling system. And my 3 grown-up children are also part of the minority, using its schools and kindergartens for their children again. So we're sort of very much a minority family. Also my brothers-in-laws, and they're all got functions in the German minority in one or the other way, political, sports, cultural, whatever. So Natasha, will you click on to today's topics? I'm going to take you through a few things just to give you a background on. We talk a lot about being against each other in the German-Danish border region to being there for each other. So this change in in the way of living together in the border region. So I'm going to tell you this because you need this background before I tell about our cooperation, the media situation, and the cooperation we have across border. And then also the big question is, well, okay, can you copy paste this, what we've done, and do it here or there or in other regions in the Europe or in the world? And then when I'm here, I'm going to tell you a little about our digitalization as well, and if this is an opportunity for the minority media, which I think. Yes, let's have a look. This is the area and I don't hope I'm messing the camera up now, so let's have a look. This is, if you go back before 1864, you didn't have Germany and Denmark like you have today. Yeah, today you have Denmark and you have Germany. You had these three duchies in between that were loyal to one or the other, and you had sort of this part of the area. They were German and Danish speaking, all of them in one or the other way. But that was also what the whole war was about. These three trying to get them back and forth. So in 1920, this is the border now. In 1920, this area came back to Denmark. It had been German after 1864, and now it was Danish again. And it was actually a referendum in 1920. They asked the people in the border area, are you Danish, are you German? And that's how they made the border. So, but on the other hand, when you draw new borders, you've always got people stuck on the one side or the other side. So we were left with a German minority in Denmark and a Danish minority in Germany. And to begin with, after 1920, the German minority was the largest, the Danish minority was very small, and today it's the other way around. We're around 15,000 Germans in Denmark, German minority. There are many more real Germans living in Copenhagen and Aarhus, wherever, but in this area, we're about 12 to 15,000. And the Danish minority, they're around 50,000 in the northern part of Germany. So, yes, you may. In the whole area of southern Denmark, 1.2 million. The northern Schleswig-Holstein, 3.5 million. And in this area where the German minority is, we're about 230,000. So we're around 5, 6, 7% of the population, and there are cities and areas where there's one German, and we're areas where it's where we're pretty big, but never more than something like, say, 10, 15% of the population. This area that I showed you, please come. This area that I showed you, we had 5 wars in 100 years. So from 1850 to 1945, the end of the Second World War, we had 5 wars. And these 3 duchies, sort of this area was the area that they were fighting for in many of these wars. After 1920, when the border was drawn, the German minority wasn't really satisfied because you had some people, they still wanted to go home. Yeah? They still wanted to be a part of Germany. Some people actually left and moved back to Germany, but very many people stayed, and many of them also actively tried to get this part of Denmark back to Germany. So when Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime took over in the 30s, some people in the German minority said, okay, this is our chance to get back. Adolf Hitler, I don't know if it was wise or if it was just pure luck, but he didn't move the border back again. He left the border where it was. And looking back, it was probably a good decision, because you didn't have sort of this new area with the troubles that you've had the last 100 years before that. In 1945, there was a group in the minority, the new leaders in the minority. They said, okay, we have to make sure that if we want to live here, we have to live in peace. So they made a loyalty declaration. They declared to the Danish government, to the Danish royals, to the Danish people, we are loyal and we don't want the border to move. So we are going to be loyal citizens of Denmark. And that was a very important thing, to sort of accept the border and accept that things are as they're going to be. But still, after 45, the Danes sort of say, what about these Germans in North Schleswig? Can we trust them or can't we trust them? So there was all eyes from the authorities on the German minority looking, okay, are they behaving? Even we at our newspaper that started back in 1946, we had a censorship. So there was a Danish policeman sitting in our office and checking what are the Germans doing, are they going back to their brown time, or are they staying on track and being loyal as they said. And also there was intelligence, police intelligence looked into people from the minority, because obviously some of these people from the minority, they had been pro the Nazi regime, and now they were still living in Denmark. So you had the intelligence, police intelligence, sort of looking at them. What are you doing? Are you behaving as a good Danish citizen or German citizen in Denmark? And this went on until around about in the 1960s. So we had sort of 15 years of, okay, do we trust or don't we trust? And I think we had two important turns. One was that in 1950, just after the war, all the Germans in Denmark that had participated in the Second World War, or that had helped the Nazis in Denmark or in Germany, they were all sent to prison. About 3,000 from the German minority went to prison. And in 1950, we had a general amnesty. Is it called an amnesty? Yeah. Where they were all freed from prison. That was also a very wise decision, because Denmark showed its humanity, and you were sure that you didn't have a frustrated and beaten German minority left in your own country. And then 1955, we had the Bonn-Copenhagen declarations. They were actually a piece of paper set up where the Danish government said, we respect and accept the two minorities, ours on the other side, and the German government did the same. It was, looking back, it was, the paper said, you can't check or ask or test if somebody is part of the minority. So if you said, I'm part of the German minority, then I was part of the German minority. It also gave you the same rights and possibilities as the majority in the country. And there was also a funding connected, saying that to have these rights and possibilities, the Danish state would support the German minority in Denmark. The funny thing is, it didn't say anything how, why, how much. It was simply more a moral obligation. And when we travel and meet with other minorities, very many young people say, how can you live without having law-written rights that state you can have this, 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 this? Well, sometimes moral obligations are more worth than a law, because if the law says you can have 10 dinar per person, then you can have 10 dinar. Then you don't get 9, you don't get 11, you get 10. But if having the same possibilities and chances and rights means that you actually need 20 or 25 to be on the same level as the majority, then this is where the moral obligation comes in, and they say, well, okay, we signed these papers, they have the same, okay, so we're going to pay them 20 or 25 so that they can have these things. Or if the Danes have new rights, but it doesn't say anything about that in the papers from 70 years back, said, no, you can't have them, it doesn't say here. So this is where the moral obligation is much stronger than an actual law. So you can always go back and you can point at, well, okay, you say at the moment, no, we can't have this, but where's your moral in this point? Very good point. Just to give you sort of the, at the moment, the German minority is funded from Germany with 12 million euro per year, but the Danish government also funds us with 35 million euro a year. So the whole business sort of German minority in Denmark is a sort of middle-class business company with 47 million gross income from the two states. I usually tell a story from my family when I have to tell how the situation has developed in the minority. My father was he was a politician in the minority in the local, so he was the minority in the local majority, and he was sort of one of the first generations in the 70s, 80s, sort of really reaching out and cooperating with the Danish majority. When he died a few years ago, and he was very liked by the Danish population as well. They respected him. When he died, I said, what about church? Are we going to sing Danish and German songs? He said, no, only German songs. Deutsch bis an die Knochen. German right into the bone. I said, wow, where did that come from? Because that's not the way I experienced him in his daily living and work. So he and my wife's father, that generation born in the 30s, they would say, we are German. My generation 30 years later, in 1963, if I'm asked, I never say I'm German. I would say I'm a German North Schleswigian. So I've sort of got this part of regional identity in me as well. And together, the German minority and the Danish majority has a very strong regional, what do you say, well, when it comes to being, we might be German and Danish, but when it comes to that, we're all from Sønderjylland, it's called in Danish, or North Schleswig, we're one, sort of, and together are this. And that's what I would say. And my children now, they say we are Danish and German. They don't want to have to choose and say, well, I am this. Because in one moment, if they're in Germany with friends, they might say, well, we're Danish. And when they're up here, sometimes they might say, well, we're German. And you take the identity, that was the word I was looking for before then. You can still be yourself, but you can have different identities in different situations. So this was sort of a little to the minority of today can't be like the minority was in 1930. Time just changes, and it changes the situation also for the minority. So this is to give you a background of where we stand in the Danish-German border region. The situation has gone better for every 10 years and year for year. And this is, again, from fighting each other, standing against each other, and turning our backs to each other. The minority and majority sort of turn, and at one point they were side by side, and now we sort of say we're there for each other and we work for each other. So the media situation in our region is very typical. You have two big media outlets from the majority, you have two small minority outlets, you have regional TV stations, radio stations, weekly newspapers. Flensborg Avis, the Danish newspaper in Germany, has around 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. It's still very small. And then they have 1 day a week, they have a sort of circulated even wider, they have about 13,000, 14,000 subscribers. Then there is us from Denmark-Schleswig. Usually years back, and I still tell the joke obviously, we say we're the largest German-speaking newspaper in Scandinavia. And so we have this break and say, and we're the only one. We have been and have been the smallest newspaper in Denmark for the last 10 years. So our problem as a minority and a minority media was this critical mass. If you have to start a printing station, if you have to do distribution and whatever. So that's a problem. But another problem was sort of reaching the new generation with an old school media. And that was an even bigger problem, that we were writing for an ever smaller part within the minority, and the younger generations, they knew who we were, but they didn't use our media. So that's why we went all digital last year in February, and I'm going to tell you a little about that later. And then we have, you can change again, then we have the big Danish media, SHZ and Jysk Fynske Media. They reach around 150, 200,000 subscribers every day. So that just tells the difference in size between the majority and the minority media. See here, that's where you have sort of the red ones are the big media north and south of the border, and the yellow guys, that's us and Flensborg Avis. Coming to the after 1945, the weapons were at last laid down after the Second World War, but the war carried on just in words. Yeah, and words, you know, words can hurt almost just as much as weapons can. And the newspapers, the Danish newspapers, the German newspapers, had a very nationalistic approach. Everything Danish was bad, everything German was bad. And you'd sort of, we would, as Nordschleswiger or Flensborg Avis, as the Danish newspaper, we'd sort of hold up, you know, the Danish flag or the German flag. That's what we were by heart, and that's what we would defend, as if the war sort of carried on in a way. And this approach changed gradually over many years and tens of years. My father and his generation, when they after the Second World War went through the street, if he was alone and there would be 5 Danish guys on the other side of the street, they'd come over and they'd knock him down. And on the other hand, if there were 5 German guys and there was only 1 Danish, they'd go over on the other side, and he'd. So that was sort of the normal situation after the war, where you still had sort of hatred within the population. When I was a small boy attending sports festivals with my school, and I was 7, 8 years old, I came into the stadium and there were German schools and Danish schools, and the big Danish boys, they would stand and say, Nazi pig, they'd shout. And we didn't, as a small boy at that time, we didn't know how to cope with this. And very many in my generation actually left the German minority because they said, I don't want to experience that. I don't want my children to experience that. And this, of course, gradually changed over many, many years. And today what we see is that some families, some of these that left the minority, they're coming back because it's safer, better. The German image generally in Europe has changed to the better. So it's okay to be German in the border area. In 2008, there was a multi-millionaire businessman who said, why can't I read what's happening 10 kilometers south of me in my newspaper? He was obviously from the majority, and his majority newspaper, the border was also a news border. Nothing really crossed the border. We had, as a minority paper, and Flensborg Avis's minority papers, we had sort of both angles, but the majority readers, they didn't really know what was happening on the other side, and it went both ways. So he planted this idea in 2008 and said, why don't you work together? And it was funny, but it did come from the outside, and said, okay, let's find out if we can do something together. So 2008, we started something called Bland Naboer unter Nachbarn, within neighbors. So we started, it was funded by EU money, by Interreg, for the translations and for the organization of who's writing what when. But what we did was actually teach the other side how things work on the other side. So we tell, how do kindergartens work in Germany and in Denmark? How does the fire brigade? How does the tax system? So all these society topics, we sort of, this is how it works in Germany, these are the differences, here's how we do things the same way. The funding stopped at some point, but we carried on and started making sort of a best of, thinking, okay, a good story south of the border could also be a good journalism north of the border. And we did that for a few years. And then in 2013, again, it was the two majority papers that said, because they had the problem about not knowing what was happening on the other side, saying, should we do something together? Should we do some news work together so that we can tell our readers what's happening on the other side? And they said, yes, we can, but the German newspapers say, I've got a problem because Denmark Schleswig actually already get some of our pages and we print for them, so we have to have Nordschleswig as part of this. And when these three then sat together, said, hey, we three can't, so we need the Danish minority to come as well. And then you had these 4 newspapers, 2 majority, 2 minority newspapers, sitting together saying, yes, let's do something together. And what they did do together was actually very, very ambitious. They actually opened their newsrooms and news desks for the other. So they went to the IT and said, hey, IT, you need access to those guys from over there. They need access to our system. They need access to our... The IT guys will say, hey, they're strange people. We don't know them. What are they going to do when they're in our IT system? So well, they're not going to do anything because the only thing they want is sort of to... what we were allowed to copy-paste their journalism. So I can go into the other three media's stories and say, hey, that's a good story, that's a great photo. I'll take that for my media, I translate it, and I can bring it almost at the same time. So these 4 newspapers, and now we're online, but we can actually use our news at any time, at no cost at all. And so in my media, it would say, writes Jørgen Møllerkær from Flensborg Avis, or writes Mette Schultz from Jyske Vestkysten, and in their papers it would say, writes Gwyn Nissen from Denmark Schleswig. So we actually credit the journalist that has written it in the other paper. And some of the guys or girls come over and say, hi, have you, Danish saying, hi, it's really fun to read my article in German and see that I've written a German article, which she of course hasn't, because she's written it in Danish, but we translate it. In the start, some of them said, oh, if we have a really good story, then we want to keep it for ourselves. But that never turned up as an issue at all, because if you have a really good story, your ambition is to be on the front page of all 4 newspapers, and not only on your own. The good thing is getting the news that you have on all media sites. That's the good thing. Some journalists were a little skeptical to start with, saying, it's not really fun having the other guys' articles in our newspaper, on our news site. We'd rather have our own. But the readers don't care. They just want the news or the good story, and they don't care if you've written it or you've written it or I've written it. And then, of course, some people say, well, if you do cooperate in that way, why don't you just make it to one media, then not 4, make it to just one media and one media outlet. But we still have our own DNA. We are the German minorities media, and we have stories that are special for the German minority. And sometimes you write things that are special for the whole area. And that's the same for all the other 4 media as well. So on one hand, we cooperate as much as we can. We also have, we've made we've made some magazines together, we've made some projects together. And so at the moment we're working on a project about the military situation in our area. So we throw in one journalist from every media, and they work together and talk Danish and German. And when they have made their stories at some point, we're going to translate them into what we need and have to use. So you may change. Apart from that, we actually live together with our Danish competitors, colleagues, in 3 of 5 media outlets in Denmark. We go to the same coffee machine. We eat together. Sometimes we party together. Not enough, but it's very. This is were 2 of the magazines we've made, and the top picture is the side thing we have got as well is that apart from all 4 cooperating, sometimes we just cooperate 2 or 3. Say, hey, we have this idea, who wants to join in on it? And this was an interview of the minister in Schleswig-Holstein, and this was the 2 minority newspapers, my chief editor colleague and me, that did the story. And sometimes it's the 2 majority newspapers making something. So we have very different constellations. Coming out of this, we all 4 work together. We actually work together in very many different situations. And that's also, if you go back 20 years, the 2 minorities, they wouldn't be working together either, because they were the Danish minority and we were the Germans, so we would have nothing to do with each other, although we have many problems that are actually the same as a minority. So that's been a very good. Oh, you can change again, Natasha. And if you stay there, you can change once again. We actually had a prize a few years back. These are the four. The two that was on the picture before that. We're on the outside. We didn't get the prize. It was the Midas, the minority media organization, which we worked together. They gave the prize to the two majority leaders, because it was the majority that sort of took in the minority media. When the four of us, it's still the same four of us. When we have meetings, it's never sort of, I'm the small guy, and from the small media, and they are the big ones, so the big ones, they can decide what we have to do. It's never like that. We're just like the Four Musketeers, almost. We're on the same level at any time. And what they do somehow, what they have done as well during this cooperation, during this learning process, they have very often, when we did this digitalization, the Danish media, they actually had some very good things going on digitally, and they said, if we can help you in any way, let us know. And we actually used them. We used some of their leaders, we used some of their information, we used some of their knowledge for us. So this, the will to help each other develop in the business, in the border region is very big. We could certainly do more, but being the head of a media business, we're very busy people, and sometimes we forget. What we don't forget is our newsrooms. They will always have an eye on this daily news and say, hey, they've got a good story, and they'll take it. But when it comes to projects or what can we do and things like that, sometimes we're just too busy. Yes. Yeah. Can you copy-paste this project to other places in the world, in Europe, in regions, or whatever? When I was here last time, 3 years ago in Novom Sadu, and talked about this topic as well, a group of young people came up to me and said, you give us hope. It's very moving and touching, and still is. But what sounds natural and sounds like a good relationship now has taken almost 100 years in our region as well. And how long will it take here? How long are your troubles going back? I think that it's up. Now you're 6 of you, so it's you 6 or 7. It's up to you to decide really how long it's going to take. The best argument for me is peace, but you will experience setbacks, and you'll experience old, grey-haired editor-in-chiefs saying, no, we can't do that, and no, we don't like them, no, we don't need them, no, we can do this on our own. That's why it's a good. You can't just copy paste it and start where we are now, because this has taken, as I said, it started 2008, so this has taken 25 years as well, building up trust, and that's what it's all about, building up trust. If you let people into your IT system, it's people you trust. If you say, Gwyn, you're going to this thing and you're going to write one article to all 4 newspapers, it's trust that I'll write an article that every newspaper can use. And so it's about starting low-key with 1 or 2 small things to build this trust and to be together to learn the other side of the story. You can ask yourself not what's in it for me, but what's in it for us. That's sort of the first thing where you have to shift your mind, because if you only think what's in it for me, then it probably won't be a success. You can think about how can you help each other on a daily basis. Now we've moved together in one media house, and this means that if there's a meeting in town, our guys or girls go next door and say, should we drive together? Yeah, okay, let's drive together. So drive, Danish journalist, German journalist, same car. Or the German guy's been to a meeting, the Danish guy comes late, and the Danish, hey, do you have any photos from the first start? Yeah, can I have them? Yeah, okay, no problem. So, and these things started without being on boss level. Yeah, they started right down here, helping one colleague, helping the other. It's often also a matter of competition. What's the competition situation? Do you actually compete about the same readers, or do we have a parallel sort of? So do you write for these readers and they for those? And if you have the same picture, or you have the same story, it doesn't really matter. And we're just very lucky in the German-Danish border region that the majority newspapers, they don't go over the border. We're so small, minority newspaper, it doesn't really matter if we've got 50, 100 or 200 subscribers more. The others are multi-million businesses. And so it's actually the only problem is the two minority newspapers. We have sort of some people going again. So we're a little careful because my site is a free site and Jørgen Møllerkær, the Flensborg East site, is a paid site. So if I take his stories and put them on a free site, people won't go in on his business. So we talk about how we use each other's stories so that I don't sort of harm his business. I don't want if you want to think bigger, then the next step is to say, what topics do we have that are relevant for the majority and the minority? That could be youth problems, housing problems, infrastructure, stories you can work on one or two or three or four media together. And you're actually, that's what we think. We're making a statement of a better world in our region. We're saying German and Danes can work together, and they're actually very good and successful at doing so. And you might even come up with other starting points that shows that change is possible. When I was chairman in the sports club, we started cooperating with the Danish club because we weren't players enough for the handball team and they weren't players enough for the handball team. So we had one handball team playing German and Danish players together in the team. And we've done and we've done that for 15 years and I still remember that these were the worst or the best matches when you had to play against the Danes from the town, you know. You'd have 400 or 500 people in the sports hall, and it would be sort of pure hatred, you know, and we're really gonna beat them. And suddenly, a few years after, these players or their kids are standing on the same team. And that's what we are, journalistic wise, is we're standing together in the same team. To finish off, one thing is I want to tell you a little about our digitalization of Den Schleswiger. I don't know if I have a slide, have a go. Have a go. Have a look. See if I've put something after that. As said, we had this, that was our last newspaper. And if you can read, do you understand German? It says, Wir müssen neue Wege gehen. We have to go new ways. That was the headline of our first newspaper, 1946. It also said, we have to go new ways. That was new ways after the war and the Nazi time in the minority. This was going new ways digitally. You can give it another click because this is what it's all about. Not me, but the thing in my hand. Yeah. We went from this very small bubble, 1,100 subscribers in this minority bubble. We discussed with each other and about each other, and nobody else sort of blended in. When we went digital, we did it, we've done it over, we didn't only do it last year, but we're sort of into it 100% and work in a very different way today than we did 2 years back. COVID began around that period, which was in a way lucky for us. We went from these 1,100 readers to having about 33,000 readers in a weekly basis, some of them coming once a week, and some of them coming 52 times a week. That's 7 times a day going in on our website. So I don't know who's got time for it. And it's not us, we're filtered out of the statistics. And on single days, we could have up to 43,000 unique readers going onto our page. And we found out during the pandemic that we had a very important role in translating how the rules are on the other side of the border. So very many Danes travel to Germany, very many Germans travel to Denmark, and they maybe knew their own rules in their country, but what are the rules over there when they go to work? And the rules changed, you know that from here. Hey, tomorrow, new rules, 11 o'clock, yeah, and okay, in Denmark, they've got new rules tomorrow, 10 o'clock. And we were fast sort of updating these new COVID rules, how to pass the border every day. And these 2 articles have been read now, or at that point, because nobody reads them now, 450,000 times. So coming from 1,100 subscribers to 450,000 times being read is something, we just left this bubble and came out into World Wide Web. During the last 2 years, Der Spiegel, Bild-Zeitung, Süddeutsche Zeitung, BBC, all Danish media have quoted stories from Der Nordschleswiger because they can actually see them, find them. So when they Googled COVID Denmark or Denmark or whatever, we'd come up with our stories. They'd phone us, they'd quote us, and we were, during COVID, we had around 1,000 I don't know if you call them readers, 1,000 people calling us, writing to us, SMSing to us, they asked us, how are the rules? It says everybody from Schleswig-Holstein can go, but I'm from Schleswig-Holstein, my wife is French, can she go? Can I visit my horse in Denmark? Yeah, we never thought about Germans, they're having their horses standing on fields in Denmark, yeah? Or that they have their camping vans in Denmark, or they have their boats in Denmark, and the other way around. So all these people phoned us, rang us, gave us a lot of stories, a lot to write about, and so we phoned the government several times a week saying, hey, these rules you've made, how do we understand them? Yeah, like that, yeah, but it's not like you're sitting in Copenhagen, you're making rules, but in between there is something that you haven't thought about. And so this gave us, because of this digitalization, it just gave us a gigantic platform, which is worth a lot. And that's just a teaser for next year, so I can come back and tell you about what digitalization means for minority media, because it's a great chance to come out much further. One of the pros of this, just to give you a last thing, was that we found out through my Danish networks and contacts, and we could see it on Facebook, that very many Danes from the majority in the area, they actually read our media in German, because very many know both languages. So some of my Danish friends and network, they would say, "Oh, I just read this article." Does he read my media? And had people phoning from Oslo and from the other end of Denmark saying, "Hey, I read your news on the website. I've got nothing to do with the German minority. I'm just from the area down there. I'm interested in it. So I read it in your media." Partly because we're for free, of course. That's always an incentive, but also because what we work with, the way we do it today, is so much different and better than we did if we go 5, 6, 10 years back. So that was, this is what it's about, isn't it? Availability. You have, you can sit in New York somewhere and you can read Der Nordschleswiger, or you can sit on your tractor and drive the fields up and down, or you can be wherever you are. Accessibility is just important, but it's also the big chance for media, especially minority media, to come out much further than we did before.